Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to this roundtable moderated by Erin and Jay from Miovision. Erin, over to you.
I need to unmute. Thank you very much. It's great to be here. I want to say thank you to Move America for organizing and giving us this opportunity to have this conversation today. In a moment, you're going to meet a phenomenal group of panelists. I think we must have 200 years of experience among us. We've been having a brief discussion, and there's more to talk about than I think the conversation will allow today. I want to invite any attendees to participate by either putting your hand up, and then Lucia will let us know that you want to add to the conversation, and you're welcome to post in the question and answer, and we will make sure that we're getting to those questions throughout the panel. My name is Erin Skimson. I'm the VP of Product Management at Miovision. We build intelligent solutions for traffic data collection and analysis, mostly in service to excellent management of traffic signals. I love my job because I really get to tackle big questions in the world, interesting questions about how are we using technology and innovation to actually create a better and more livable experience for citizens. So it's it's fun to have passion about this, and I get to have good conversations with folks that we're going to meet today. So today's discussion is around how is the world shifting to the Internet of Cities model. So first, I think we need to know what exactly is the Internet of Cities model and why does it matter? I'm going to give a quick overview, but I know that each of the panelists also brings their own viewpoint, so I'll invite them in a moment to share that. Global population is expected to double by 2050, and WHO would tell us there are 3 million people a week moving to cities. Certainly, Diana, we talked about, you've got, as a director of transportation, you're now managing an influx to an infrastructure that was never meant to sustain this kind of burden. And so intelligent and sustainable technologies are certainly one way that can help support that demand, but only if we're thinking about the needs of citizens. And this has been expressed by all the panel members as well. So the Internet of Cities, which I would equate to a smart city or Internet of Things, really brings together technology, government, civic interactions, business, and society to use data and digital technologies to deliver outcomes that are relevant and impactful to communities. And so we're going to hear a lot today about how are cities moving in that direction and what are those impacts, because it's the case studies of the actual impacts that I think are most interesting. The stories of how is this actually changing people's lives? How are we making our cities more equitable? How are we offering opportunities for mobility, new ways for economic development to prosper, driven by innovation, but for the purpose of actually serving our communities. And I think municipal leaders are noting that smartness is not about the technology, but actually about the people who deliver it and the people that it serves. And so today I'm going to invite panelists to talk about this. How is this evolving in your city? How is it evolving in your organization? How is the evolution of access to data and access to technologies enabling those outcomes in your cities? So I'm going to ask each of the panelists to introduce themselves and give us a view of why and how this topic is important to them, either as individuals or in their cities. I'm going to start with Diana, please.
Okay. You know, one of the challenges that we're having right now, and I think you mentioned, is that we have a lot of areas within our city that are actually disconnected. So right now, we are actually moving an initiative forward where we're looking to connect our community through Wi-Fi and internet. And so some of the challenges we have, I think, is on the procurement side of how can we get this done, because these dollars are actually being spent from the CARES dollars that we received through the federal government, and we have to spend it all by December 31st. So one of the things that we're looking at is how can we move this process forward so that we can make sure that we are setting up Wi-Fi that's going to allow service to our most vulnerable areas within the city of Tucson. But also the other side of that, from my side, from the transportation side, is that Wi-Fi is going to allow me the opportunity to have connected signalization throughout my city so that I can move to real-time signalization. Which is really important because we use our local roads. We don't have any major highways or interstates that actually help move a population of over 1.2 million within the Pima County region. So we are looking at using adaptive signalization as an opportunity, but that connectivity needs to come into play. So the technology that we're using is allowing us to really think about moving forward and how we can best practice providing to our most vulnerable community, as well as also meeting our transportation initiatives.
Excellent. Diana, can you let everybody know what your title is and who you work for?
Oh, I'm sorry. I jumped right into what I want. I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
Diana Alarcone. I'm the Director of Transportation and Mobility with the City of Tucson. Sorry about that.
That's okay. Thank you. So I'm going to, with that, I'm going to move on and just have everybody introduce themselves, but I think you've given us lots of fodder for conversation. That's okay.
I misunderstood the question. So bad.
Okay.
Sorry.
No problem at all. Guillermo, given you actually also have an interest in using some of the data that Diana talked about that comes from connectivity, how about you introduce yourself and MEEP?
Yes. Hi. Hello, everyone. Thank you for inviting us. I'm Guillermo, the CEO of MEEP. MEEP is an app that combines and integrates all mobility options in the city. We're trying to deploy a mobility as a service platform. We are headquartered in Madrid, but basically we are focusing our deployments in Southern Europe. So we have deployments in Portugal, Spain, Malta, and Cyprus around the Mediterranean Sea. And basically for us, once we try to make the mobility or the transportation side of the city smart, we need to connect also with other data and information sources to provide a better service for our users, because the connectivity of mobility modes not only ends when we connect the services, but there's a lot of things.
Thank you. So, you know, that this leads to an imperative about economic development. And Dominick, maybe you can introduce yourself, because you certainly play in that area as well.
Definitely. Hi, everyone. Dominick Popham. I'm the Vice President for the Smart State Initiative at the Arizona Commerce Authority. So the Arizona Commerce Authority is the state's leading economic development organization, help lead the governor's economic development policy and programs. However, I will admit that I'm a city guy. Used to work for the city of Phoenix and always have, done all my education in urban management, city government. And so my role at the Arizona Commerce Authority is really to look at how do we start to connect and align the technology and innovation strategies for all levels of government in Arizona to not only help us solve challenges that our cities and citizens are facing, but also how do we drive next generation economic development. So I think I'm excited today to talk a little bit about connectivity of people and organizations, cross-sector, cross-jurisdictions, and cross-industries, and how we're redeveloping governance models that enable us to solve challenges at scale and drive economic development.
I love it. Thank you. Karl, maybe you can give us a perspective of, Dominick talked about the importance of that collaboration across the state or kind of at a meta level. Maybe you can talk a bit about what you do in Austin and how Austin is achieving that within the city.
Certainly. Hello, everyone. Karl Popham with the City of Austin, specifically the city's utility, Austin Energy. Austin Energy is the third largest city-owned utility in the United States. We've been in business since 1895. So my role is I lead our electric vehicles and emerging technologies team. And in context of smart cities, I also co-chair our community climate plan on transportation electrification and our smart cities working group. And a lot of what we look at is it's kind of hard to nail down one specific thing. I have right now 30 active programs and projects that the team manages. And those projects really address kind of 4 key areas: is the environment, the financial health of the city and the utility, customer experience, and equity. So those all play a role. And I would say one of the fundamental things, I'll just kind of pick climate as a way, is it's important to us in the city of Austin that next generation mobility removes all the emissions, both tailpipe and CO2 for climate change and clean air. Just remove that out of the equation. So a lot of our role is equitable, ubiquitous infrastructure that's more and more powered by 100% renewable energy is kind of the overall strategy. So we have a lot of programs and pilots in that area to include 10 different grants, both federal grants, state grants, philanthropic grants that the team manages as well to include that partnership. And anything we do at the city, it takes a village. There's nothing that my team does in and of itself. So I would say we work very closely with other sister city departments to include our transportation department, sustainability office, city fleets, and others, as well as other stakeholders. We have close relationships with academia, and then of course the companies that have the innovation everywhere from, I have a team that manages specific pilots for startups, all the way with big companies doing big innovation stuff, and how we can incorporate to make the city more livable.
Thank you. We may come back and ask about some of those grants, as funding tends to be a hot topic.
There's a lot of grants out there. You know, if budget's your issue, it's hard to not align with the grant. I did that. I think I've completed or currently working on 14 over the years, been a principal investigator in most of those. Grants are pros and cons. Not all grants are created equal. There's a difference between a US DOE grant that has specific clauses versus a philanthropic grant, and then all things in between. But yeah, happy to talk about
yeah.
grants.
We may come back for some tips of, certainly if you've been involved in 14 of them, you've been successful over the years. So we may pick your brain. We'll come back and pick your brain about that, I think. Elliot, can you talk to us about your role in Minnesota and how it ties to this topic?
Yeah, my name is Elliot McFadden. I work for the Minnesota Department of Transportation in the Office of Transit and Active Transportation. I am the coordinator of the Greater Minnesota Shared Mobility Program, which is brand new at MnDOT, just started this year. And I work with our 36 transit agencies in Greater Minnesota, so essentially all the communities outside of the Twin Cities, to identify opportunities to implement shared mobility and other kinds of technology to improve service. And because I work with a variety of different communities, everything from regional, fairly dense cities like Rochester and Duluth, to very rural areas, there's a lot of overlapping challenges that we see that we're looking at technology to help us with. You know, one, we have a limited number of providers compared to a large urban center. So, you know, how do we maximize the delivery of those services? We have an older population and a fairly large percentage are disabled. So there's accessibility issues with technology. How do people interact with that? And then we have just the actual conductivity itself. Some parts of the state have really bad cell connection, and you can't get a good internet connection to get the services. So we're looking very much at mobility as a service and other kinds of technologies, looking at digitizing a lot of the services, the information about the transit and other kinds of shared mobility services we have, which right now, there's no way to see in an electronic format, in a trip planning format. We're looking at that as a way to better coordinate services, because when we have a limited number of providers, we need to maximize their utility so that people aren't waiting long hours. We need to look at a better experience when people are actually placing their trip instead of having to be on hold or not knowing when the service is going to arrive. And also better planning. We need to be able to see where do we have service and where do we not have service. We don't have a good way to visualize that today. And by having this a data platform that pulls in all of the information of all the different services, we can actually visualize the state and see where we have service. We actually have a legislative mandate to, over the next few years, provide 100% of the transit demand for the state. And so for us to be able to meet that, we need the tools to be able to see where we have service and where we don't. And we're looking for data flows and the interconnectivity that comes with all these services to help us meet that goal.
Okay. I'm going to follow up with you about the legislative mandate. So there's a legislative mandate. So in the how our city's evolving, what resources come with that legislative mandate to enable this goal to be reached?
Well, that's a good question. Often we get unfunded mandates from our legislators. What I think has changed, though, is this happened about 10 years ago as a phased-in approach, and I think at the time that was all about how many vehicles can we get on the ground, how many routes can be put out into the community. And we have a real challenge in our rural areas having enough drivers. It's not just the equipment, but it's having the staffing to be able to provide the service. And so I think what we're looking at is, how do we use this technology to better coordinate services, because we have a lot of, especially in demand response services, we have a lot of trips being planned in silos. So we have inefficient use of vehicles, and so people wait longer. It's more expensive for the state for us to provide those services. And so we actually, within our organization, have set aside monies with the way we fund transit, because we fund it both through federal dollars and we have state funds to actually develop this technology to create these efficiencies. We've also been successful in getting money to develop that more. So we were one of the recipients. I was the grant lead to get an AIM grant to work on mobility as a service. So we'll be doing that as well. So we've been actively looking for other funding sources at the federal level to help us meet those goals.
Okay, thank you. So talking about, what I hear is that there's some vision that's coming with, there's a mandate, but also some vision within the organization. Dominick, maybe you can talk a bit about the vision that's been put forward in Arizona and how you're helping to contribute to that broader vision across the state.
Yeah, definitely would love to. And I think it's the ultimate vision it's this idea of collaboration as the next competitive advantage. And cities are really understanding how important it is to collaborate, because the cities that really understand how to collaborate with academic partners, they're the ones that are going to really be the forerunners in this next digital, economy. And the ones that don't are going to be left to this proverbial digital dustbin that we like to call. And so maybe if I take a step back and kind of talk a little bit about how we're building a new governance model, not only in Greater Phoenix, but now down in Southern Arizona as well, including Tucson. It was really this idea of, when we were working with the cities, there was really two main frustrations. The first frustration was that we were all the cities in this region were expending limited resources to really try to solve similar challenges. And they weren't really talking to each other. The thought was, wait, why are we trying to solve these really urban challenges in silos? Traffic congestion doesn't start in the city of Phoenix and stop when it hits the city of Tempe. A pothole in Glendale is pretty much the same as a pothole in Goodyear, and even trying to connect a low-income student in Mesa is really the same challenge as trying to connect a low-income student in Avondale. And so why are we all expending really limited resources to solve all these same challenges? And then the second real challenge was economic development. How can we attract and recruit technology investment into our communities that's really going to help us thrive and help us solve these challenges? And so what we started to think about as a region, we got together mayors, the governor's office. We started to think, how are we going to compete and how are we going to solve challenges at scale? And what we realized is that our competitive advantage was who we were. So we realized that we're the 4th largest county in the country. We've been the fastest growing county for the past 4 years. We've got the #1 largest public research institution in the country in Arizona State University. We've got the #1 largest community college district in the country. We've got some of the leading technology companies here, but none of us are really working together to solve these challenges. So the thought was, how could we get these organizations to think together, act together, innovate together, and then procure technology and infrastructure together and really outscale everyone that's focused at building smart cities and try to build a first smart region. And so that's exactly what we did. And so in November of last year, we've launched what we're calling the Phoenix Connective. And it's 23 communities, cities, towns, and a county. It's Arizona State University, it's a community college district, and it's leading technology companies like Cox Communications, Dell Technologies, Sprint, which is now T-Mobile, to really try to solve these problems at scale. And so what the Connective is, it's building that unified leadership structure to really drive innovation through collaboration and empower governments within the region with the mechanism to create, develop, and deploy emerging technologies across jurisdictions, across sectors, and across industries. So what we like to say is it's, on the economic development side of things, what we're building is the 21st century digital proving grounds that allows governments, industry, and academic research institutions to really collaboratively design and develop these new technology demonstrations that can advance solutions to public challenges, have a measurable impact, and really the potential to scale. And that's really what we've been trying to do here, is build that new governance model that allows these people and organizations to come together to solve challenges at scale. And what we've been excited since we started the Smart Region. I have since moved on to the state, and momentum continues to build. As I mentioned, not too long after, the Southern Arizona started to form their own Smart Region with the city of Tucson, the PEMA Association of Governments, and other partners down there. And actually now we have 2 smart regions starting to move forward. And what's even better, I would say from a state perspective, is those 2 regions, our 2 largest metropolitan regions in the state, are now starting to actually work together to start to drive initiatives at the macro regional scale, right? They're actually coming together to look at a 5G project right now. And so this idea of collaboration as the next competitive advantage, I think is really gonna be what drives cities in this, this Internet of Cities kind of movement that's moving forward.
Yeah, congratulations. It's a massive feat, and it's really exciting to start to see it proving out. Karl, I'm wondering, so we've heard from Dominick that the collaboration is the next competitive advantage within regions. You talked a lot about the collaboration that happens within Austin, and you're coming from Austin Energy, but talking a lot about how the work that you're doing is contributing to the future vision for transportation. Maybe take us through how Austin works together, to look at achieving the goal that you had painted for us.
Well, certainly. I work with a lot of other city departments and stakeholders throughout the city, community, civic, academia, industry, other departments. And so, I mean, let's just actually talk about grants as a collaboration tool. Let's just get two questions in one. Nothing brings people together quicker than going after a grant. So I've been involved with 14 grants, and there's 14 that we won and 2 that we lost. I probably learned just as much the 2 we didn't get than the 14 we did. And let me just tell you a little bit how collaboration works in grants. So first, it's all about putting together winning. If you want to win a grant, put together a winning team. Play to your strengths and other strengths. Don't we just want to get that. The quickest way to not win a grant is greed. Well, we can do that. We can outsource, but that's going to come to us. No, get the other players who have a strong strength. And then focus. What I also found with grants, a lot of grants, they look at themselves as the portfolio manager, and you're a project. So be very specific. Don't try to solve 4 or 5 bigger issues. Be very specific so they can look at you as part of their portfolio. Don't give them a portfolio of projects you're going to do. Most people think grants is about budget. I'm going to tell you the dirty little secret here at the City of Austin, at least for me. Budget is number 2. The number 1 reason why I do grants, schedule. By accepting money, you as a city, your highest sign on the dotted line. By accepting your money, we're going to do this thing. We've already identified these partners who are going to do it, and we're going to get it done by this date. So internally, it prioritizes your work above and beyond all your peers, because now you have grant funds associated that you could potentially lose if you don't meet that schedule. So that's why I do grants, is to have that competitive advantage among my peer projects. Is, hey, I'm a grant funded project, and we don't want to slow it down. I'd say that the last kind of best practice there, a lot of grants is repeat business. I think I've been a principal investigator now on 5 U.S. Department of Energy grants. Do you think that number would be 5 if our very first grant we did tanked and was looked at as being bad? No, so you're building a relationship and a sense of success with that grant partner. So you start having credibility, and grants start becoming a repeat business. So first and foremost, above everything, there's a lot of hunters out there, but you also need cooks. You need to cook and deliver a good meal with what you've caught. Don't always be hunting and looking for that next new thing. Is focus and deliver on what you have, and then you'll get that repeat business in grants. But just being a city department, we can't do anything meaningful without wide base of collaboration. It's just in our DNA, how it works. It's how it works with other, not just departments, but the community at large. So, I'm a little disappointed when I hear about other people having these siloed effects going to other cities. I'm just representing the City of Austin. I see that considerably very little, but it's just about working relationships with others and developing those relationships. I'll leave, I guess, in one other just real simple advice. Coming into an organization, or as new people come in an organization that are going to be important stakeholders to me, I always want that first interaction or first meeting with that person is I don't have an ask. I don't have anything to ask them. I don't need something for them. I meet that person because I identified them as a stakeholder and I want to learn about what they do, what's important to them, what does success look like. So then meeting 2 or meeting 3, when you have a collaboration ask, in their mind, they're emotionally thinking, oh, Karl knows me, gets me, now he's coming. If the very first time you ask someone, oh, I have this and I need you to do this and task, you're now compartmentalized in their brain as someone who needs something and you're a task and they're going to treat you like that task versus, oh, this person gets me. This is someone who I kind of like working with. Now after the 3rd meeting, oh, let's work together. There was a synergy there. So that, I guess those were my nuggets of grants and collaboration.
Karl, I'd like to hire you to be a guest speaker for like Business 101 for any business.
Sure.
Reminder cities or smart cities. Like, you know, I think you're painting a really, an excellent path to success. But it's like clearly you've been able to accomplish that at Austin and within Austin. And it's, you know, I admire what you've done and where it's taken you, and also the opportunity. You said, you know, the fact that what Austin Energy is currently able to contribute and will continue to be able to contribute will increase in value as the city's departments are working together to use technology to become more efficient and effective. So it's, you know, the benefit again comes back to you were very clear about this in our pre-discussion, that the benefit of this is to the citizen, and it's about, you know, ensuring that equity is being managed. You said the environment is being managed, that, you know, you're able to ensure that you've got a livable city for citizens. And so it's all the things you talk about contribute to those end goals beautifully. Thank you. Guillermo, I'm wondering if you can give us a bit of a European flavor of, you know, we've got a number of American cities represented here, but in Europe, you talked about cities that you've been able to be successful in with your business are ones where there's actually some private management happening. Maybe give us a bit of a description of that, please.
Yeah, well, I don't really know so well the administration as you guys, so I will more or less talk about our perspective from all the innovation approach that some of the cities are performing. And in our case, we have seen that, of course, in Spain is a very centralized approach in terms of innovation and how all the cities are structured. Some of the innovation funds or grants are carried out by the European Union. So the harmonization process is very similar in every city, but it's true that even though we are much smaller than the US, we have very different approaches from, for example, Barcelona has a very public approach rather than Madrid is much more pro public and private partnerships. And we have find our solution, mobility as a service, more acceptable, or we have more the process for us is easier in those cities that some of the main activities are outsourced to private companies. We believe that those private companies, of course, they have a business model that sometimes part of the fare is subsidized, but even with that in mind, they're willing to take the risk to go into new projects, new innovative projects that sometimes they're not as profitable as other projects, in order to test that technology on the field and try, and well, they will be able to apply that mobility as a service technology to other cities or to other operations that they have. For us, I think that approach is really useful and allow us, of course, to get into the cities. And it's true that sometimes when you made an agreement with that type of operator or partner, you immediately get to know the public side, the municipality, or even the agency of the region, and you have a much better approach, and you are also have the open doors to an RFP or other types of access to public contracts.
Right. Do I hear you saying that there seems to be more risk tolerance for innovation to be tried in cities where there's a public-private partnership?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes, for sure. And well, we have seen that some of the companies, for example, they have not only operations in a urban environment, but also like long distance transport operators, or other companies that, for example, are managing cleaning services for the city, or waste management for the city, and they also have infrastructure businesses, and those companies, they tend to have like a much more direct and an easier approach to innovation and to projects that I think eventually there will be a reality for all the cities.
Yeah, interesting. Thank you. Diana, coming off of the idea of risk management, and I'd like to move to talk about procurement and sort of the execution of how do cities actually adopt this kind of technology to make the shift to the model. So you mentioned that Tucson is in the process of looking at some new technologies.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe talk about in that adoption, you've got legacy technology that you're looking to modernize. What's the approach you're taking? How do you look at that risk mitigation? And one of the things that we talked about as a panel before is, from an industry perspective, the procurement process is challenging, I'll say. And the speed of innovation for the private sector is really much faster than the speed of adoption. So, how do you ensure that what you're going to be delivering to your city is the latest and greatest with some of the barriers of procurement in place?
So, thanks. That's a great question. So I think one area that we are looking at and approaching technology from is where we're asking the technology community, depending on what we're working on from that aspect, for a request for interest. And what that allows us to do is really look at what the technology they offer, which one's going to give the best bang for the buck, in essence of being able to integrate in some of the legacy, but also advance us to moving into the 21st century and allow for that flexibility in the technology as we move forward. So that's one way to do it. And then the other way to do it is a co-op. There's, it's very exciting to hear about what they're doing up in Northern Arizona. And the idea of that co-op, because that co-op allows us to kind of piggyback off of each other. So if there is something out there that you're doing, it allows for you to actually maybe take on some of that technology and apply it and use that procurement practice to bring it forward. But I think because the technology is advancing so quickly in all fields, not just from a traffic, but from a transit perspective, just from a connectivity perspective as a whole, I think doing it through a request of interest is allowing you to get the best technology, not necessarily putting the focus on price. And so, I think that's a way for us to sort of make sure that we're finding that flexibility.
Can you talk more about the co-op and what that model looks like, and what the benefits are that you see?
So the opportunity that you have there is, for example, so governments, all different, every municipality or and state level, even federal level, all have sort of a different practice. So a co-op can pull themselves together and say, hey, as a group, we want to go after some particular procurement practices, or we want to go after a field. And you kind of put together the regulation, and then you open up and you list all of the different things that will apply, but here's the regulation you follow. And then that goes out as a whole. So really what that does is allows the companies to look at it more in a larger volume. So it's a better, it attracts more business, and it also allows for a little bit better funding structure, because volume actually creates the same amount of dollar, so it allows for that opportunity. but it gives you the flexibility as well. So it's finding those co-ops, working in collaboration so that you can go after that best technology, and you sort of have like a cafeteria style listing of this is what you can do under this co-op. Here's the regulations, the procurement regulations that were applied, and you just sort of check that box and you can sort of go and grab. And it allows you to really move those instruments forward quicker and in a more expedient manner as well.
Excellent.
Can I add one thing? One of the things that I did before coming to MnDOT was I was the CEO of the bike share system in Austin, Texas, actually, and I led our product development team. And we really took a lean startup approach in looking at sort of what is the minimum viable product and what's the problem and the solution that we're trying to what's the problem we're trying to solve for, essentially. And I think when you're looking at any kind of innovation project, I think that needs to be the focus and less getting sucked into the technology, because I can tell you we had projects sometimes where very simple technology solved the problem, you know, and we didn't need the really built out thing. And so I think building your projects where you do a lot of work at the beginning to really well define what is the problem you're trying to solve, and understanding how, you know, different technology options can get you there, and trying to build that the least amount of investment you can to test the idea before you get ready to scale, so you don't get stuck into putting all your money into a technology that turns out, you know, was the Betamax of you know, of whatever you're trying to do. And so I think that's needs to be, you know, the approach that is really important for government entities to take. That this isn't, you know, we're not buying paper clips, we're not getting productivity software or anything else that's already a built technology. We're doing innovation projects, and we have to be thinking about it differently, both the procurement process, the partnership process, and the project management process.
I couldn't agree more. So I manage a product team now and remind them frequently, it's our job to be in love with the customer's problem, not in love with our technology. And, you know, it's a means to an end. It's not the end in and of itself.
And Aaron, maybe if I can just piggyback on that, something we're doing, and maybe a suggestion for all of the cities out there is, I would say leverage your universities, right? To Elliot's point, you know, as a city, when I work for the city, you're right. I mean, we can't go out there and be like, yeah, we're gonna do R&D, we're gonna test, and we're gonna fail. It's gonna be great. The mayor would never have that, right? But so cities are we're reluctant to fail. But guess what? Universities, they fail all the time, right? That's what they're designed to do. They're designed to fail, learn, and then grow. And guess what? A lot of the times the universities mimic a city itself, right? I mean, especially Arizona State University, it's almost, I think it's the 11th largest city in Arizona, if you think about landmass. And so what we've been really focused on doing is, to Elliot's point, really thinking about the problem, developing those MVPs, testing it on the university campus, and then scaling it from there, right? But leverage the university, because they love the fail, learn, and then test again, where the cities can sit back and hold our budget and hold everything until they prove it. And then we can really leverage our budgets to try to then scale it. But yeah, leveraging the university is huge.
That's a great point.
Yeah, I think you can also kind of turn on its head a little bit what is success. I mean, I think the idea, David Zipper had an article or a white paper that he put together recently that was about these kind of innovation projects. And a pilot, the goal of a pilot is to test an idea and find out information. So as long as that is your goal, finding out, learning, there is no failure. If the product didn't work, well, that's what the pilot was there for. It was there to save you the bazillion dollars you were going to spend on a dud, right? So I think it's also, when you're in the public sector, to reframe that from the public's point of view. Just because we did a pilot and it didn't come up with a product that was a good market fit doesn't mean it was a failure. We learned a lot, and we're going to be better stewards of the public dollars for that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. You can't be afraid of quote unquote failure, because lessons learned is a lot of why you do it pilots. And one way to manage that risk, you know, as a city department, is we do like pilots a lot, because it sets the expectations up front. It also mitigates your risk. And I really like Dominick's point to universities. And it's just not, I mean, so University of Texas is a huge university, huge imprint. There's a lot of organizations that you don't even know they're associated with the University of Texas till you dig in. The two that we work with a lot is something called Pecan Street Inc. They're embedded at the University of Texas, but they're an R&D lab in the energy space. Another one's the Austin Technology Incubator, one of the longest technology incubators in the US. They claim they're the longest one, just had their 25th anniversary, but they're embedded in the University of Texas. So we get a lot of our startup screening through Austin Technology Incubator. We get a lot of generally our residential research with Pecan Street, and they're both associated with our local university. The other thing I would say on, we talk about co-ops. What I look for in a good co-op agreement is really two things that make it a lot quicker. So one in Texas is DIR. So that's a statewide Department of Information Resources called the Texas DIR contract. Why I like getting a lot of things to the DIR contract, if I'm trying to be very quick, is it does two things. One is it pre-negotiates the price and it pre-negotiates the terms and conditions. Both of those are killers, and both of those require to go beyond that as RFP. But if I want to buy or hire people through DIR, that's like a 10-day window. If I want to do an RFP and go through council, if it's above council threshold, $61,000, that is a 9-month process. So it just gives you just a wide range of how you want to do procurements, I think are very important. And that all co-ops, or I'm just going to call it generally contract mechanisms, are created equal. The ones I look for if you're trying to be agile. And then I'll just end on one other thought as if you're a service provider. So Dominick was saying he's always a city guy, but now he's this, this private and it's a corporate guy. I'm almost opposite. I'm a city guy for the last 50, but I'm still corporate because the previous 9 years a corporate guy. So I'm kind of the opposite of him, doing it from a slightly different perspective. And so I think it's important when you approach, are you a transactional partner or strategic partner? Because I have different expectations of you if you're going to be strategic versus transactional. And I think Aaron summed it up well with just kind of the approach. You're solving problems, not selling technology. That is the first format, is if you're looking at this account strategically. There's nothing wrong with being a transactional partner. That's where you get on those DIR contracts, you list your rate and all that, and you just want that quick turnaround. Strategic partner is, I'm expecting you to be more long-term. You might do things at no cost to the city to help us with road mapping or whatever. It's truly more of a collaboration, and the transactions is something that can follow down the line, but you don't lead with that. So it's really about what your strategy is in tackling that relationship and how you want to position your company.
So I have a question. This is like, we've talked about like sort of the kumbaya moment is really important. Everybody gets on the same page and we work together. And but when you get into the weeds, there are varying priorities. And I'm curious about how, when you get into the weeds of like choosing one technology over another, or one standard over another, in particular when you're looking at really broad application of technology statewide or across an entire city, that actually has to answer the call for a number of different needs, not just transportation, but Diana, you said it's transportation and transit and shared mobility. And, Gerba, you said it might need to hook into the waste management and electricity and water. What are you seeing in terms of, standards development, or how cities are working to prioritize the broad needs over specific needs, or maybe specific needs over broad needs?
So I can speak for the city of Tucson. So we've actually have recently set up, we're calling our Smart City Committee, which is made up of different stakeholders within the city. And so we have as you mentioned, our water director, our IT director, transportation, our environmental service, which handles our garbage and our recycle, and police and fire. I want to make sure that, I put them at the table too. And we need to talk about what smart city actually means, because when you say smart city, that means so many different things. Like it means a whole nother thing to me from a transportation perspective than what the fire chief thinks of it, in a sense of being able to improve his response time to the residents of our community. So we've actually, because we found we were all over the board, and we found that, and really it was our new IT director that kind of like brought it all together, was we don't need to, y'all are buying different platforms. This is silly. We need to be talking about one platform that's going to work. And then what are the components that support that one platform? So even just in how you handle your 911, I mean, with the changes in, what COVID has all taught us is so many opportunities of what we're not doing well. I mean, it's created a lot of pilot opportunities, but how is it you create that, availability to the community through your 911 system? Is it really a 911 or is it a social aspect? And then what does that need to look and feel like? And so that too can be one platform. So that one-stop shop of customer service that you would be providing as a municipal entity, that would be able to do everything for you from water, transportation, emergency, non-emergency, healthcare, fire, whatever it is. And so, again, here we've kind of brought everybody together, kind of said, we got to stop. Everybody was moving in too many. And so we're working now on that one platform. And then what are the components that are going to support the platform to meet the different needs from the different departments?
A question, when you say we, who's been identified as the necessary stakeholders at the table?
So it's internally, and then we do have some external outreach. So, as mentioned about using your local universities, because they offer some great research and technology that you're not quite aware of, and they're willing to experiment. So we actually, some of the stakeholders we have involved is the U of A. I mean, I work very closely. I'm going to give a call out here to the University of Arizona down here in Tucson, and we actually use them for many of our transportation initiatives out here. One of the folks, something that we're sort of actually adopting off of the city out of Phoenix or out of the northern region, is they have actually been able to experiment with this automated delivery program, and they are having some great successes. So we're like, well, how can we get to an automated scenario here, and what would it be? And so we're actually getting ready to test our streetcar with it being run automated and versus requiring a person behind steering the streetcar, because it runs on rails. So we're getting ready to do this great technology practice. Well, we were going over here and doing it this way, and our IT guys like, well, wait a minute, y'all don't need to be doing it that way. We can tap into this and this. So again, we've pulled away from the silos, brought everybody. So a lot of it's internal, but we do have some external, which is, of course, bringing in, our partners, which is the University of Arizona that's helping us with leading this innovation, as well as those folks that are going to be most impacted by it, which is our transit folks, and as well as our downtown folks and businesses. So how does that look and feel? And that's how you start having the conversation. But it does need to start internally, because we have to break down our own silos within the city.
Beautiful. Aaron, I think to your question about standards, so one of the things that I did previously was I was a co-founder of the North American Bike Share Association, and we established the data standard for bike share, GBFS, which is the equivalent of the general transit feed for micromobility. And that only could happen by having that kind of organization where you had government policymakers, private vendors, operators all agreeing on what would work. And I think the way transportation is today, I think that's a really good model because we have so many players. Now,
Yes.
We're working now at MnDOT and several other entities around the country on a standard for the transactional data for demand response, which is a really important piece of technology that needs to be developed so that we can better integrate all of the human services and non-emergency medical transportation, because those are all completely siloed and don't talk to each other and are very inefficient. And there's very much an approach of we're going to talk at the governmental level, but we're going to be involving private sector folks, operators, so that it works for everyone. Because if it doesn't work, if we all just demand it but it doesn't work for people, then we're not really solving the issue. And so, what we can then do at that point on the government side is, once we have something we can all work with, then we can write it into our RFPs and we can say, you got to use it. And then it becomes the standard for the industry, right? But until we do that work that makes sure it works for everybody, we can't just demand it.
Yeah. And it's an interesting chicken and egg. So coming from the industry side, you talked about Betamax, let's talk about for V2X communications, are we going DSRC or 5G? So we're in the business of communicating between various aspects of the transportation system. Where do we put our eggs, right? And we're not a massive company. We have very targeted research dollars. I don't want to go down the wrong path and end up on the Betamax side of the argument. And so, that like involving industry in that discussion to ensure that can we also provide pilot products, and again, for a minimal viable product that we can maybe we produce one of each, and then you work with industry, right, to be able to, but then we need the pilot programs in cities to be able to say, hey, what actually works best for everybody, according to the needs you've recognized or that you've identified. So I think, that back and forth between what are the city's needs and then how does industry actually meet that need is an important partnership.
And hopefully if you collaborate like that, you avoid competing standards. Like part of the problem when you have the competing standards is you're not getting the leadership from the big gorillas in the room, which in transportation is going to be DOTs and transit agencies and the folks that have the dollars, right? And we're waiting for the industry to do it. Well, we got to both be at the table to make it happen. And if we're all actually working collaboratively on that, we can avoid the competing standard situation.
I think one way you as a city can help promote the standards, I'll use our Shines grant as an example, is when you put your winning team together and your approach, you pick a standard and it's a standard-based solution. And that way that helps send a signal, and at least to your partners, and helps give them a funding stream if they're going to participate in this grant, that they have to be compliant. We had to kick off some pretty big players in our industry as we started moving forward in the grant because they weren't demonstrating that compliance with the standard we all agreed to up front. So that helped bring in players and fund players for their product piloting and ultimately commercialization in this standards-based approach. So once again, we're tying in kind of money with collaboration, and then you just make that as a core tenet of what you're trying to do, and you're promoting these standards, and we're going to be a standards-based solution.
Guillermo, are you seeing certain standards evolving in Europe that either is helping to guide your business, or is NEAP helping to guide standards that are being adopted in cities with respect to data sharing?
Well, we always, when it comes to the standards, in the public side, as someone mentioned, we are using the GTFS file that I think most of the public bus and metro operators are using. But we have seen like different approaches in other types of modes. But we always encourage the municipality to have an open data system or backend at the end where everyone with any standard can plug in and can be compatible with the end user solution. Because we believe that unless you're a very big player that you can like really change the industry and be like the dominant one, it's difficult to set a standard for companies that are really new or changing a lot. For example, when it comes to transportation, we have seen that a big industry adoption alongside Spain was the MyFair chip. That was an NFC validation system. And that system has, of course, like any standard, its pros and cons, but there is like a narrow space for people with limited access to NFC solution. So sometimes, for example, other alternatives like QR codes or even SMS, it seems like a really old technology, but could work better than the latest solution. I think, as Elliot mentioned before, sometimes you don't need the high-end technology to solve a problem. For example, in this case, would be like to get in the bus or check in the metro.
I love that. I remind my team often also, we don't need to create a $5 solution for a 50-cent problem.
Great saying.
Yeah. Dominic, just maybe we've got just sort of 5 minutes left. So actually, before I ask you, are there any panelists or any attendee comments or questions that have come in, Lucia? Anything? I don't see any, but if there's any, you've got them in the last 5 minutes. What I'd like to ask each of you to do is sort of provide maybe a summary statement, you know, about sort of what's one takeaway or one best piece of advice that you would like to leave the audience with, and with respect to, you know, how cities are making the shift to the Internet of Cities model. Karl, you made noise first, so I'm going to put you on the spot.
Oh, I made no, I didn't mean, I will end with this. And just working with cities and larger organizations in general, you know, I already talked about the first time you meet someone, you don't want to have an ask. If someone new, because there's a lot of turnover and someone new comes in the city, you know, the city CIO or the chief technology officer or someone like that, like, oh, that would be a great person. You need to get on their calendar within 30 days of them being new. Don't let them get entrenched into a new position 12, 14 months where they're already starting to think of they have all fresh ideas. They're all shiny and new, and they're just like an open book. And I even internally, I do that as well. There is a key stakeholder that I know that function is a key stakeholder of mine. I don't do it the first week. I'm right around week 4, week 5, and I at least do it 1 to 2 weeks in advance. Hey, I just want to give you an executive briefing on these emerging technologies thing. It also puts you in alignment with insert name here. That's important to them because we've already briefed them, just so you kind of know what they know. It gets accepted 100% of the time, and then you start the relationship there. Be quick.
Beautiful. Thank you.
I'll chime in and say, dealing with any innovation project, set out a hypothesis of what you think that this technology is going to do before you start, and then hold yourself to that at the end of the project when you're making decisions on whether to scale or pivot or abandon the project. It's very easy to fall in love with the technology and the idea and ignore the fact that it's not performing. And if you set out that idea, you know what it is you want to accomplish, what you think it's going to do, and hold yourself to that, then you'll save a lot of heartache in the long run. And you can actually, if it's just a small problem, you can address it then. But it's really easy if you don't do that to just kind of only see the rosy parts of the project and ignore the shortfalls. And I speak from painful experience in many projects, but the projects that have succeeded and done well are the ones where we really defined what we were trying to do from the beginning.
Excellent. Diana? So,
you know, I think there are so many people out there that are great resources. And if one have an opportunity to attend virtual or in person, is that opportunity of networking and learning what everyone's doing. I mean, even in this just last hour, I have folks that I'm going to be reaching out to talk about their innovation, their practices, their standards and everything, because you may be just at the beginning of something and they may have something that's really going to help you move along quicker. So I think it's important to make sure that you have that network, you understand what it is, and not be afraid to reach out and find their successes and their failures to be able to include it in whatever approach you're making, especially when it comes to technology, because it is so rapid and it is moving. And some folks have had the advantage of being able to move on it quicker than others. And so take advantage of those opportunities, talk to those folks, find out what they did, and, you know, capitalize on it. It's okay. You don't have to reinvent the wheel every time.
Yeah, that's good. I mean, that takes you got to let go of your ego a little bit, right? But it's
but I've been writing stuff down for the last hour, so I'm going to be calling on some folks.
Great, Guillermo.
Well, I think the Diana's perspective from networking, I think is true, and also, well, I think from all the comments that we share today, I think it's very useful to understand that collaboration is key to foster innovation. And from my perspective, there is a entrepreneurship perspective from a small company. I think we are not afraid to talk with administrations. And I think nowadays the open approach is shared between like the people in the US and here in Europe, and anything can be done, but you need to find the right approach, and also the connections within the transport industry are key.
Great. And Dominic.
I think just to hammer home, it's all about collaboration. These seemingly insurmountable challenges that we're facing today are going to require an unprecedented level of collaboration. So be open, be willing to talk to people. It's your housing department. It's no longer a HUD housing project. No, that's now a connectivity project. That's a last mile transit project, right? And so you can no longer just look at one project as a housing department project. You really have to be able to break down barriers and build up partnerships to solve these challenges that we're facing today. And so I think have that growth mindset of, I need to talk to people to really understand the challenges in these projects, and then build, to Karl's point, build that awesome all-star team and go nail it.
Absolutely. I'm going to add one more. So while I manage product now, my background is in marketing. And I think the fact that we now have access to data through connectivity means you can tell incredible stories and success stories backed by data. And that sort of a qualitative story, but backed by some quantitative results, make it pretty compelling and sort of make the impact impossible to ignore. And to use that storytelling, that positive storytelling, looking at the results, it's the success begets success. And so use those results to hit home and reiterate, hey, the investment that we've made in connectivity has resulted in this outcome. Here's the quantitative measure. We need to double down and continue to make that investment. And I've seen a number of cities be very successful with that approach. So I would lean into the marketing arm of things as well. It's an important piece of your promotion. With that, I would like to say a huge thank you. I feel really inspired by the group of people here. Just the backgrounds that you bring are phenomenal, and the excellent work that you're doing. Thank you for that, and thank you for taking an hour out of your busy schedules today to talk to us and provide this valuable conversation. If there are, I would invite through the Move America site, you can connect with any of the panelists if you have follow-on questions, and I'm sure that they would invite you to do that the same. And with that, thank you and have a wonderful day. Stay safe, everyone.
Bye.
Bye now.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye. Thank you. Bye now. Thank you so much.